I think it is now worth assessing whether the asterisk plan really worked.
For Thunderbolts, I don't think it's the fact that MCU fans were not going. I think it's that MCU fans were not going again.
Is Thunderbolts' struggle reflective of a franchise that truly is a state of stagnation? The question now, I think, is does Marvel have the sauce for Fantastic Four first steps?
Do you think the Red Room has a rec soccer league?
Is it fair? Is it just Dreykov and Melina
The losers
Vosikov?
all get shot at the end of the game.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. Did Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts / New Avengers bold marketing strategy around the asterisk really work? And can any Marvel movie in the future make more than $500 million? Or is this now a smaller franchise than it was 5 years ago?
Oof, this is the sneak peek, the weekly show on New Rockstars where we look ahead to the future of fandom. I'm John Casa, and I get to be joined today by Erik Voss, or vice versa, I guess. I'm joining you.
I think it's always a pleasure for either one of us to get to join the other. John, how are you doing this week?
I'm great. We got some bad news, then we got some interesting news, but it's just good to get that sweet, sweet trickle of news. So I'm enjoying all of the Doomsday leaks or, rumors or whatever. You talked about that on Rumor Rundown with Jessica. Excited to watch you guys kind of talk about that for the next year and a half.
I know. Now it's such a longer Advent season.
But, it will be fun to have a little bit more time to build all that hype and get excited for it. As opposed to the Thunderbolts, which I don't know. It felt like Disney's marketing for this movie was like, we have a plan for the second week. But before that, I don't know.
I don't know if they had a plan for week 3 or week 4. I guess their plan for week 3 and week 4 is let Lilo and Stitch's success distract Disney from giving us too many thoughts. I really do think this has been a pretty big month for Disney. I think they were, honestly, Thunderbolts, we shouldn't naysay it too much. It's been a success, I think, overall. It will end up being at least a moderate profit by the end of its run. But Lilo and Stitch has been the bigger success story. I think we shouldn't be surprised by Lilo and Stitch doing that well for Disney. Stitch has been a huge merch character for Disney since 2002. He's never really been a background character. He's always been a forefront plushie that you could find anywhere in any Disney storefront. So I'm sure they were eager to get this out there. They knew it'd be a hit. But Thunderbolts seems to be struggling a little bit on the back end. It had a decent success, but we were waiting to see if its opening weekend and second weekend would have a strong tail the way movies like Ryan Coogler's Sinners have had this year.
And it had quite a sort of open room in the box office, right? There wasn't like something that came out its second weekend that would have destroyed its long tail, right?
Right. We've had Final Destination's Bloodlines, but it's a different audience.
Yeah.
Lilo and Stitch is even a different audience than Thunderbolts is. There's been no other major nerd franchise.
Right. Mission Impossible, what would have been its third weekend or fourth weekend?
Yeah. Mission Impossible came out in its third weekend, I believe. Third or fourth. But as of this taping right now, we're Wednesday, May 28th, the domestic box office for Thunderbolts is $174 million. And then its international take has been $183 million, bringing its worldwide take to $357 million. And I think it could go all the way to a worldwide take of $400 million. Thunderbolt's budget was a reported $180 million, just a production budget, which is lower than most other Marvel productions. That doesn't account for the marketing. So normally you say double that marketing, unless they got pretty clever with their marketing. But yeah, so I think it would need to clear $360 million, and I think it will do that. But that is lower than expected. And
when you read that, what did you say? 174 million domestic. I think Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness opened at 180, which is kind of crazy. It just in its opening weekend did more domestically than Thunderbolts has in 3 and a half
3 weeks. Yeah, exactly. And I think part of the concern people have is that, as of the weekend of Thursday, May 29th, Friday, May 30th, Disney and film exhibitors agreed to reduce available screenings at theaters around the country for Thunderbolts by at least 50% from what I could tell. If you look around in the LA area, most cinemas only have like Thunderbolts playing on one screen in like a 16 screen theater. Now this typically happens the fifth weekend of a release. They always scale it down. But if that didn't necessarily happen with Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which was anomalistic.
Well, and I was going to say, Ryan Coogler's Sinners may be part of the reason this movie didn't make as much as previous MCU films. It went back to premium formats. Sinners did. Which was great for me because I missed it in IMAX the first time. So getting to see it in its rerun was great, but that means that no premium screens were showing Thunderbolts for a little while there.
Right. I think that's definitely part of it, at least in the major cinema markets in LA, New York, and Chicago, and internationally as well. But also, I think this is anecdotally for sure. I think there were a lot of people who saw Sinners a fourth time and only saw Thunderbolts once. Whereas with Multiverse of Madness, and Multiverse of Madness is not even considered people's like favorite Marvel movie, but that's just that was like the average franchise release. People saw No Way Home 3 times in the theaters, and that's just not happening with Thunderbolts. And it's a shame because I think Thunderbolts is a really good movie. I watched it 3 times in the theaters and I liked it more each time. But, whatever. It's about to go out of theaters, so you can't take that as me saying like, please help this movie. But we are just saying like, this is where Marvel Studios is at right now. So I think it is now worth assessing whether the asterisk plan really worked.
Right.
And whether this is just a reflection of Thunderbolts being a title not the average Marvel moviegoer
and
knows.
Maybe some confusion with a character that has been in the MCU and was in the previous film, but not related to the title of the movie. Now, I think Marvel Studios was, they didn't have much of a choice. It's possible that when they were developing this film, the script was called New Avengers, right? But you can't market that movie. You can't title the movie New Avengers before people have seen it, right?
Yeah, I guess let's talk about that. Can you?
I don't know.
Like what?
I think if they had, I think if Kevin Feige had come up in that D23 presentation where they announced this film and showed the, not concept art, but the cast sort of like drawing and said, this is the New Avengers movie, I think people would lose their minds in a negative way.
Yeah, there's no way to spin that without people having follow-up questions that put a negative stink on the movie,
right?
Or other movies in the franchise. Because if you call it the New Avengers before Captain America: Brave New World comes out, it pisses a lot of people off and confuses a lot of people about what Sam Wilson's status is in the Avengers. Because he's Captain America, shouldn't he be the leader of the Avengers? And sure enough, that movie ends with him being tasked with putting the Avengers together. Like you could do something kind of tongue-in-cheek and call it the Other Avengers or something like
that.
People
thought the Dark Avengers for a little while. Which
the Dark
doesn't
Avengers.
Feel quite right either.
Yeah, Backup Avengers, Avengers B-sides, B Avengers. I think the Other Guys the Other Avengers reminds me of the Other Guys. So there's kind of like a comedic angle to it, but that's not exactly what Thunderbolts is going for. So they settled on a team named Thunderbolts. I would argue that probably, 4 out of 5 people who go see Marvel movies don't think of Thunderbolt, the word, as a connection to Thaddeus Ross.
I agree with you.
That's a bigger deal in the comics than it is ever in the MCU.
Especially we hadn't seen, for your average moviegoer, was it Civil War maybe the last time that, they're not watching Black Widow maybe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The last time they saw that character and it's a different actor and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I think what they settled on was Thunderbolts, and that's like what the movie got greenlit as back in 2021, 2022. They announced it at D23 2022. They're like, we're doing a Thunderbolts movie. And that decision by Kevin Feige and his brain trust probably came out of some experimentation after Avengers Endgame and going into phase 4 and trying to have different groups of like returning characters, wanting to have a team up of these figures that we saw in Black Widow and in the Falcon the Winter Soldier. I really think after the Falcon the Winter Soldier, everyone at Marvel Studios saw the numbers out of Disney Plus they saw an inflated number for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and thought that like that show was way more popular than it actually was, and said yes to like follow-ups in a lot of different ways for a lot of the characters and storylines from that. And they're like, all right, great, we're gonna take Val. Julie Louis-Dreyfus' Val, we love her. We're gonna build a movie where she's kind of the Nick Fury, a corrupt Nick Fury figure. We're gonna bring back Wyatt Russell. We're gonna bring back Anthony Mackie and Joaquin Torres are gonna be in this other thing, but then Bucky's coming back, and then with Black Widow, they just really like David Harbour, and they saw how David Harbour was blowing up, and they saw
Florence Pugh's a star as soon as you see her in that movie.
Chance to like make a movie with Florence Pugh is a pretty exciting thing. So they're like, okay, there was enough reasons to say yes to this. And they just had a script and a vision from Jake Schreier and from Joanna Kahlo and Eric Pearson, and they liked that movie, and we liked this movie. So it ended up being a success, but it's not a typical kind of like pitch to the Marvel viewers, because the title of Thunderbolts really just comes from what is like almost an A24 style movie script about Yelena's youth soccer team.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a beautiful thing, but you just never see Marvel movies do that. And it's one of the reasons I think we liked it. But for the average Marvel film goer who's like thinking whether they should spend $20 and potentially get a babysitter for the weekend, they're thinking, what is this?
Right.
Like, is this what I expect from Marvel Studios? And to have a successful Marvel Studios production, you do need to, overcome that threshold the way Multiverse of Madness did, even though I think that was a lesser movie than Thunderbolts was.
Do you think the Red Room has a rec soccer league?
Is it fair? Is it just Dreykov and Melina?
The losers all get shot at the end of the game.
Oh, that goalie! I would not want to be the goalie. It's the anti-Ted Lasso coaching method, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's every episode's bleak. And you're right. We're talking about the box office of this film, but for Marvel Studios too, I wonder if obviously like box office has to unfortunately be the end goal for a lot of these movies, right? But what this movie did really successfully is it took a bunch of characters that not too many people cared so much about, with the exceptions of a few here and there, and made them really compelling. And now my sort of like biggest criticism of phases 4 and 5 have been like, I'm not really connected to many of these characters. Mm-hmm. Some of them totally, like some of them absolutely work, but for a lot of them, especially the ones in the movie that we watched, in Thunderbolts, I couldn't really care less if they were going to be in Doomsday or not. And now we got the Doom chairs, the Avenge chairs, whatever you want to call it. And people were like, oh, okay, I guess all these Thunderbolts jabronis are going to be in Doomsday. After watching that film, I am so excited to see these characters come back. So like, Marvel Studios obviously can take a lot of, wins from Thunderbolts. And I think that is probably chief among them.
Yeah. I hope that they don't look at some of these box office numbers and just learn the wrong lessons from it. I think really, even when it comes to the marketing, I loved the marketing campaign for this movie.
Very fun.
And without this marketing campaign, it would not have cleared $300 million globally. I think it did work. I think the asterisk did work. I think the New Avengers, kind of retitling it New Avengers after 4 days, I think it made the movie more successful because it was truly organic. It did tell the story that the movie was telling.
Right.
And I think when marketing fails, it's when they're trying to communicate a different message and they're trying to make up for something.
It has an A- cinema score, which, is kind of a weird metric, but it is like a lot of the times, did the audience get their expectations met from the marketing material? It's sort of like cinema scores is maybe the closest metric that gets you that information.
Right. We've seen examples of cinema scores having like C and D.
For good films.
And often it's because audiences were misled by the marketing.
Right.
That's usually the reason. It's usually when there's some kind of really dark ending where a lead character gets violently killed or something like that. Or it's just like surprisingly violent. Sometimes just film goers are like, I wasn't expecting that.
We just did an episode of The Break Room about phase 1 and 2 movie trailers, and like Age of Ultron, I think, is the classic Marvel example of like a really dark trailer and the film just doesn't quite go there and people are expecting a little bit of a different tone.
Yeah. Is there a recent Marvel movie that you feel like the marketing was a little deceptive? Definitely examples of Marvel trailers oversharing what's in the movie.
You did a great video on the deep dive about like actual trailer deception in terms of like the characters from Spider-Man No Way Home being visual effects out, or Hulk not appearing in Avengers Infinity War in the same way, or whatever it is.
I think Sony does this a lot. I think the trailers for
Madam
Web,
a lot
Craven,
of the Spumsy trailers had posters of Spider-Man in the background.
Yeah, the Morbius
whatever.
trailer I think is the worst offender here. They really marketed this as a Spider-Man crossover movie, and the movie had nothing to do with that. Arguably the Madam Web trailer did communicate something.
We just got that report that came out a couple of days ago that I guess Peter Parker was supposed to be more Peter Parker, who's referenced in the movie, but is not even born yet, right? Yeah. Apparently baby Peter Parker was going to be more of a plot line in that film, and they took it out. So I do kind of empathize with these marketing folks who are like, oh, you changed it.
Yeah.
Got it.
There was that Andor season 2 trailer that had rock music to it, and then watching Andor season 2.
Man, what an odd trailer that was.
Yeah.
It made me not interested in watching Andor season 2 after such a great season 1. It turns out season 2 even better.
Even better. The season itself was so good you did not need to market it that way. And I think it was trying to appeal to an audience that was never going to watch Andor. No. And then people enjoyed Andor season 2. I think it was a big success story for Disney Plus and for Lucasfilm. They didn't need to try to market it that way.
Well, I think it's interesting you bring up Andor. I think it's similar to Thunderbolts, which is that the core audience was not showing up. For Andor, I think just Star Wars fans in general feel burned from some of the things that Lucasfilm has been putting out over the last decade. For Thunderbolts, you mentioned this earlier, I don't think it's the fact that MCU fans were not going. I think it's that MCU fans were not going again a second time, a third time, like you were just sort of saying. And I think Marvel needs to figure out how to, I don't want to say put more Easter eggs or more cameos or whatever in these films, because then people want to go back and watch them and things like that. I don't think that that's actually true. But there does need to be a reason to go back and watch these films for a second time. Brave New World came out on Disney Plus today, the day we're taping this. I don't know that I'm going to fire it up this weekend.
What are you talking about? You don't want to watch...
I don't know, right? What is it? What is it about a movie that makes you want to go back and watch it again?
That's an excellent question. Maybe I'm just being affected still. I'm in the afterglow of going to Universal's Epic Universe.
Wow. You've been watching all of the How to Train Your Dragon films nonstop.
I have. Those you can go. I think there is something. It's what Scorsese criticized as films as theme park rides.
Sure.
I think a movie like Marvel, within the Marvel brand, you need to have kind of a theme park ride sequence that is super immersive, that happens so fast you are just overwhelmed by the sensation of it that you don't catch everything. And it is almost a fireworks finale of insanity. Thunderbolts didn't have that.
Yeah.
And that didn't make Thunderbolts a worse movie. I still love Thunderbolts, but normally the sequence that you see with them going through the void, the way Jake Schreier shot it was an emotional experience for Yelena Belova. It was darker colors. It was in shadow. It was Grace Yoon building practical sets that felt like Eternal Sunshine in the Spotless Mind in a little bit. And I loved that for the movie. But that's not a sequence that a lot of film goers need to go back to the theater to see a second time. Compare that to Spider-Man Far From Home, the Mysterio illusion battle. I'm not talking about on the Tower Bridge. I'm talking about in that warehouse. There was a nightmare
snow
sequence.
Globe and the Tony
where
Stark
Peter
and all
goes
that.
through a snow globe. Yes, it had Easter eggs in it, but I don't even think people would go back and rewatch for the Easter eggs. That's one thing I had to for my job.
But it was a creative and inventive sequence.
And it was done with a lot of VFX, good frame store VFX, but it was just an interestingly storyboarded sequence. Multiverse of Madness had several of those.
Absolutely.
And say what you will about that movie, but the Illuminati Massacre, the Danny Elfman scored music battle.
Yep.
Strange going through the different dimensions real fast.
Wanda turning into a horror character.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Strange resurrecting, dreamwalking into a corpse. Those are the types of sequences that Marvel fans. I'm not saying this is good cinema, Scorsese. You have a point. This is like writing, Monsters Unchained.
But what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Sometimes you want to ride Monsters Unchained.
That's what Marvel Studios has built its brand on. Is these sequences that feel like you are sucked into a splash page of a great Marvel comic. And I think it's okay for Marvel Studios to have a few of those in a movie. I like it when they don't build their movies around those, as they did, with Thunderbolts didn't even try. And I respected Thunderbolts for that. But I think to get those repeat viewers, you need to have at least a few of those visual delights.
You're right. I think it's that in tandem with good storytelling, because you have something like that in Brave New World. You have the kind of aircraft carrier Celestial Island sequence, and that feels very much like, I want to ride that ride. But it doesn't work.
Let me give a pitch
well.
here.
Yeah.
Imagine if Sam and Joaquin go inside of Tiamat.
Hell yeah. What does that look like?
If they go through an adamantium mine and they see other weird things that kind of look like infinity stones, or they see like 3 claw marks on the side of it or something like that. You could, again, I'm pitching Easter eggs here, but just going inside of Tiamat and it looks weird.
Yeah.
If it just looks weird and there's some kind of like celestial-esque production design, that is something that gets people to come back. I think just it being, I know.
How dare they make Tiamat a MacGuffin twice in a row?
It's such a dumb pitch. People are going to be like, so you're just saying just if they went inside of Tiamat, it didn't look cinematic enough aerially outside? I do think it was so Top Gun Maverick on the outside, and I love that. But if you're trying to make a story that gets Marvel nerds to come back the second and third weekend, you got to give them a bit of like diversity in lighting and in scale, and a good battle sequence that, like, Avengers 2012. There was a sequence where they were on the back of a Leviathan, and it goes through different blocks of the city, and it ends inside of Grand Central Terminal.
Yeah, I think, having action sequences that have beats and have different moments and have twists and turns are really important to audience engagement, right? You're talking about the Avengers has that in spades. Mad Max Fury Road is maybe the best example of that. And you're right, for that sequence, it was sort of one note, right? It was like, we're flying around and one of our, planes is brainwashed, whatever it is, we got to take him down. And that was like the story beat. There was no second beat other than like the threat of Red Hulk, which never comes into fruition.
And it felt like
that's the second beat you need.
Exactly. It feels like it was reconstructed from something else. Yeah. The fact that Ruth Bat Saraf is there, suited up.
Very weird.
Why?
Very weird.
Why when she suited up? We don't know. Why does the president have to be there in the middle of it all? Like,
why can't he hang up the phone? Come on. You're getting so angry. Just hang up, dude. Come on.
Sean, you just asked a question that I never.
Right? Like, it doesn't come on over the PA system or anything like that.
It's not like programmed in his head. He doesn't have an earpiece that he can't get out of his ear. Oh my God, just hang up the phone. Hey, look, you tried to say that to from the beginning of
Scream? Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore in Scream.
I don't know.
Saying that to her.
We mind melded on that. That was crazy.
But you know what? She did hang up the phone a few times. And then it was only under the threat of like her boyfriend being kidnapped.
Well, he was dead anyways, right?
Yeah. That's one of the most classic things that even the Scream franchise has addressed in later sequels. Like, why don't you just hang up the phone? That's a really good point. And I think a movie that does this pretty well, Civil War, the past Captain America movie, right? The Civil War airport battle does a great job having scenes that are localized on different parts of an airport.
Yes.
On the open air tarmac, the inside part where it's Peter with Sam and Bucky.
And there's a second beat, right? Like, getting Giant Man in that sequence it changes the whole dynamic. Yeah.
And that is a battle that, like, while its scale was awesome and it was fun to rewatch, even just like the people criticize that scene for its color balance. It's a lot of gray tones.
Right.
But the action and the choreography of that action, the heightening of the sequence, make it a great sequence,
Yeah.
So I do think Thunderbolts lacked that. The question now, I think, is, does Marvel have the sauce for Fantastic Four first steps? Is Thunderbolts' struggle in its third and fourth and fifth weeks, is that reflective of a franchise that truly is stuck in kind of a state of stagnation? Or is it just a localized around a unique title like Thunderbolts?
I mean, I just want to be honest and real, and I know people will disagree with this take, but like, I do think it is, in terms of the general public, stagnant and stuck, right?
Yeah.
Remember the hype building up to Infinity War and Endgame? I wasn't working at Rockstars at the time. My whole office went to go see Infinity War together, and there were people who had never seen a Marvel movie that were going to go see this film.
Yeah.
Same thing with Spider-Man No Way Home, you could say. I don't feel that same type of hype. I don't even feel the Deadpool and Wolverine hype for Fantastic Four, right? It seems like people are still a little trepidatious, and I get it, right? The Fantastic Four franchise has not been successful on screen, really. So I understand people being a little trepidatious about this movie. I do think people will go see Fantastic Four First Steps, mostly out of like a morbid curiosity of like, can they get this right?
Yeah.
And if it's good, then great. It'll I think do numbers.
Yeah. I think for Deadpool and Wolverine, we had the benefit of
there was a lot of time,
decades long histories with a lot of these characters, and just like an eagerness to see them finally meet. Like both of the previous two Ryan Reynolds Deadpool movies were calling out,
teasing it, and
we were so ready for it. And just the idea that it's going to be in the MCU's void that could be filled with Easter eggs, and those trailers were pretty well constructed by having certain people show up. I do think watching Deadpool and Wolverine, like the fact that we got Channing Tatum, Wesley Snipes, Daphne Keane, Jennifer Garner were great. It would have been nice if like the people in like Cassandra Nova's group were actual some of them.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I love that those actors
most of them got recast.
Work. Yeah. I love the new actors they brought in. They did get Tyler Mane quickly off. They got Aaron Stanford, Pyro, and did give him a big role in the movie. It just felt like if they were going to promise this being the movie that brings back the X-Men, they could have done more. I wonder if Marvel kind of pulled the strings there.
Where were they with planning Doomsday?
Yeah.
They would have...
The fact that we have the Doomsday movie is now the X-Men movie.
Right. Because I guess they would have been still kind of working on Kang Dynasty while Deadpool and Wolverine was shooting, because that started shooting a little bit before the strikes, and then they sort of did all of their switchover stuff after the strikes, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's a good question, because I think some of the external Void stuff, the Tyler Mane stuff, and then the Chris Hemsworth stuff was already shot before the strikes, but then the strikes ended production.
Yeah.
And then they had 6 months, and in the middle of that 6 months is when they reconfigured everything, and then they resumed production in December, and then they continued shooting through December through like March. So I think it was after the big Palm Springs.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's things in Deadpool and Wolverine that were changed to not set up Doomsday, but to avoid, Marvel does definitely go out of their way to make sure all of the characters that are appearing in all of their films, we know we got this 10-year plan, and we want to make sure that we're, not accidentally using him in an episode of What If that contradicts them in a movie over here, or what have you. Even What If, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah. I think Fantastic Four might not have enough of a groundswell of enthusiasm for the brand overall to carry it to $1 billion. But I do think it could have enough of a great story and enough great sequences and enough of like cast chemistry and great music and great effects that could make it more successful than most other Marvel movies, because it's an interesting gamble, right? It doesn't have like, it's a complete blank slate. It doesn't have a lot of Easter eggs connected to the Marvel world. It's a different Marvel world even. But these are actors who we've seen and stuff that we love. And that could be enough to, like, I think people do want something different. And I think there is a multi-generational Marvel community who has been desperate to get a good Fantastic Four story on screen.
Absolutely.
And I think even the Tim Story movies in 2005 and 2007 did pretty well.
They did. And they were fun, but they were a little of the time.
Yeah.
And, maybe didn't have such a future. Right. Yeah. And especially during that time when there was no, 2007. I mean, there weren't too many people trying to do interconnected universes back then. No. Right. So
they didn't have like the studio power to really do it properly.
There was no like, these characters could appear in a different film.
Right.
We didn't have.
They would have Easter eggs. They would have Easter eggs referencing, the X-Men or things like that.
Absolutely.
There was a deleted scene where Yohan Griffith was going to look like Hugh Jackman. He's going to shapeshift his face. I think there were references because Kevin Feige was like a producer on all these, and Avi Arad and Kevin Feige tried to get like Easter eggs, and it wasn't until like they got the Merrill Lynch loan to do Iron Man, and then he's like, all right, we're going to actually make this a firmly interconnected universe. What I don't know yet from Fantastic Four is like what the sequences will look like, because we've seen a bit of their power sets. We know there's going to be a big action sequence coming out of the Ted Gilbert Theater where their alarms go off and they rush to the scene to address something. We know there's going to be some Silver Surfer action, probably where Johnny Storm is chasing after Silver Surfer. That sequence in the 2007 film was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can top it for this movie, that will be a sequence people come back for. If Galactus destroys parts of this Manhattan, if they're shooting it practically with miniatures, that's pretty cool. And then if they show us how cool this alternate universe Manhattan looks in the opening act of this movie, just to show Galactus crushing a lot of it in the third act, that might get people into the theater.
Yeah, I want to hear from you a little bit too. Like, how much of the film do you think we've seen in the trailers? We've gotten 2 trailers at this point. For me personally, I don't feel like there's much third act in there, right? We've seen almost nothing of Galactus. We haven't heard Ralph Ineson's incredible voice in that role, which is what I'm so looking forward to. It feels like they're being a little coy with the marketing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a lot of Act 1 and a lot of Act 2. I think all the stuff of like, thank you, Fantastic Four, Ted Gilbert show, even a lot of the action that we've seen.
That's
like the thing
second
running through the pillars,
him pulling the boat or whatever.
Yeah. Sue Storm like using her barrier projection. There is a shot of Reed Richards stretching his body with Galactus crushing. That's third act. Galactus stepping around. I think that's third act. I think the people underground worried that might be third act. But that and the Galactus' shadow over the planet. I think there's a lot of stuff set in space that we haven't seen.
Maybe.
Like Silver Surfer that looked like she was in Ta 2, Galactus' Forge. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in space that they are afraid to put in trailers, either for spoilers and for unfinished VFX. And I think we're going to be surprised how much stuff is in space in this movie.
Well, and in addition to that, like, we haven't seen anything from Paul Walter Hauser's character, which we assume is Mole Man, but we don't really know. We've seen one shot of
John Malkovich.
Both of us. We've seen like one shot of John Malkovich. So they're like holding a lot of it close to the vest. Now, here's the thing. We watch a lot of trailers. We analyze trailers a lot for our jobs. I don't want to say this as like a big pat on the back or anything like that, but I do think sometimes you can kind of read through the trailer and try to, obviously they're trying to make this as appealing a movie as possible. Sometimes you watch the trailer and you're sort of like, okay, it's not going to quite get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say for Fantastic Four First Steps, I don't feel that way. I feel like I believe in the filmmakers and I believe in the story that they're probably trying to tell. And it is interesting to me. And from the trailers, they are like, they know exactly what the tone of the movie is and exactly the movie that they want to make. And so that gives me a lot of excitement and expectation from this film. And so I feel a sense of trust in the filmmakers, at least through watching just these couple trailers.
Yeah. And a bit of confidence in the marketing overall.
Yeah.
I think we may be beyond Marvel's heyday of billion-dollar annual releases.
Every single year.
Yeah. I think those days may be behind them. And that's not Marvel's fault. I think that's just the death of monoculture.
You're right. What was that year, 2019 or something like that Disney had The Lion King and a Spider... Well, it would have been Sony. And
Aladdin.
Aladdin
made $1 billion.
Yeah, there was like 4 Disney billion-dollar movies in one year.
Yeah, Captain Marvel made $1 billion. Avengers Endgame made $1 billion.
Okay, wow, what an insane year.
It was.
And I don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't think
Joker made $1 billion.
We're not going to see that.
Yeah,
we're not going to see that.
It's just going to be rare where you see $1 billion movie now. Mm-hmm. Like Lilo and Stitch might.
I think it'll be Inside Out 2 did $1 billion. I think it'll be bifurcated, and you'll see movies like the Thunderbolts cap out at high 400s or whatever, and then you'll get the Avatar Fire and Ashes that do $2 billion.
Yeah, you'll get the Avatars will do well. They have to be movies that like parents kind of want to see and their kids are demanding to take them to. And kids were making those demands for Mario.
Yeah.
They'll make those demands.
Minecraft,
Minions
Goodwill.
and that stuff. I think Inside Out 2 was that demand. Toy Story 5 will be that demand. But the kids aren't as eager to see these Marvel movies. Like a kid watches a promo for Thunderbolts, they might be into it. They're probably not going to know what that movie is.
You have this sort of like behind the scenes article that came out a couple of weeks ago, I think from the Hollywood Reporter, correct me if I'm wrong, that Kevin Feige was worried that viewers would see these movies as homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It is a little like homework, or maybe specifically if it was about the Disney Plus shows, perhaps.
Yeah, the Disney Plus television shows.
But like if you are a 8-year-old kid or whatever, and you're just now starting to watch more adult movies, you're just starting to get into this. You got 35 movies to watch or something like that at this point.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
I think what it is Marvel from 2008 to 2019 had a core age group of people who were teenagers or kids when Iron Man came out, and then they were college age when Endgame was coming out. So they really grew up with this franchise. Like they were reaching. Yeah, me too. I was in college when Iron Man came out. But I still feel like I remember seeing it with my friends in college. That age group, not all of them have had kids yet that are old enough to bring back to movies.
Yeah.
Like with Star Wars, right? You had the prequels, and then by the time the sequels came out, you had Star Wars fans who had kids that they would want to take to the theaters. So Marvel now is kind of in this weird era where like it hasn't ripened yet enough to have that true second wave where those millennials and those Gen Zs have had kids that are old enough to also enjoy these movies. And I think they will. And I think they will when the Mutant Saga is cooking.
Yeah.
And so I think what Marvel's hope is just have enough of big...
Because they'll have the sort of like X-Men animated series from their childhood, right? That they grew up on. And obviously all the Fox films. But like that animated series was for kids. It was like kids watch that.
I think their hope, if they were smart, this is I think what they are doing, is they're planning the Mutant Saga being like an Mutant Academy story. You have the X-Men campus in Westchester as your home base. You have a new cast of X-Men. You have gateway characters that, like, when my son's old enough, will attach to and will relate to. And it will play to the themes of outsiderism, of otherism, of us versus them, of tribalism, that I'm sure will still be a problem 5 or 6 years from now, if not worse than now. And will make a true multi-film narrative of the times. And it'll be a movie that I'll want to see because, I grew up with the 90s X-Men. I grew up with James Marsden X-Men. And I remember seeing Rogue on screen, an opening scene where she's just like, making out with her boyfriend in her bedroom and then freaking out when something goes wrong.
Man.
Like I was pretty young. I was 12 when I saw that, but it did stay with me, throughout my teenage years. So,
And I think one thing that Marvel fumbled for phases 4 and 5 is, and obviously the pandemic and the strikes had more to do with this stuff really than anything. But Kevin Feige came out and sort of was like, Avengers movies are going to be capstones for sagas now, not phases. Yeah. And so we haven't had an Avengers movie since 2018. That's too long, right? I hope they've learned their lesson there. I understand that these movies are really expensive, but they make a lot of money for the studio. And in addition to that, not only are we going to hopefully have a higher frequency of Avengers movies, they do have the X-Men now. And so you are going to get like Avengers level excitement for these big team up tentpole movies. So I think hopefully having kind of like 2 massive teams of characters will be helpful for the Mutant Saga and beyond that.
And I really do think that a healthy Marvel universe is a universe where the Avengers, at least now, are not the A-team. I think like in the history of Marvel as a brand, the Avengers were just the scraps, like the leftovers, people who didn't fit in anywhere else and were thrown together. But they were part of an ecosystem where the Fantastic Four and the X-Men were a thing and were bigger names. And I think if Marvel Studios is doing things right, we shouldn't look to the Avengers as our main squad. Like, we should have a healthy Fantastic Four. as a demonstration of what an interesting family dynamic
Yeah.
looks like. We should have a healthy X-Men as what a interesting academic or militant team looks like, of a bunch of adults having a soap opera with each other and like kids trying to fit in with a bunch of adults who think that they're not ready. That's what the X-Men should be. The Avengers should just be like a bunch of gross, mean uncles and aunts who ruin every party that they're invited to. And then we check in with them every now and then because like the other two teams don't make sense to deploy to those crises.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'm looking forward to a mutant saga where we don't need the Avengers to be our $1 billion squad. That like the X-Men can be the main cast and the Fantastic Four can be the main cast.
And put those two teams on a pedestal for a few years, and then maybe you recast the Iron Mans and the Thors and that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, like the prevailing theory is that there will be some kind of incursion that destroys everything, and there's a reset at the end of Secret Wars. I don't know. Maybe they just take their time recasting those characters for a little while.
Yeah. But I think it also means that we're going to be in this awkward phase right now for another couple years. Ironheart, we're going to go through these same conversations for Ironheart, for Wonder Man, for Vision Quest, for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, for these animated titles. Fantastic Four First Steps doesn't need to make $1 billion. But if it can excite the fan base around the future, if it can clear $500 million and then just get people excited to see this squad again, and to see them tackle big problems again. That's all it needs to do.
Looking at the next 4 Marvel movies, we're talking about box office. Do you think that they just grow sequentially in terms of box office? Spider-Man makes more money than Fantastic Four, if the release dates stay the same. Spider-Man makes more money than Fantastic Four First Steps. Doomsday makes more money than Spider-Man. That's maybe the big question.
Secret Wars
makes more money than
that is possible.
Probably.
Although
Spider-Man is a big franchise.
Spider-Man's
obviously,
a big question mark because I feel like if Spider-Man has Hulk in it,
true,
that could do better than Doomsday could.
Big. Yeah.
Like that could be a big. It won't be as profitable for Sony or for Marvel because they have to split the profits with each other. But like, I mean, Spider-Man, No Way Home made more money than most Marvel movies did.
Yeah.
Not as much money as Infinity War and Endgame, I don't think. No, it did make more money than Infinity War.
I think it crossed $2 billion, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that made more money. Now, I don't know if Brand New Day will make as much money as No Way Home did. Because No Way Home had the benefit of the other two Peters.
Yeah.
It had a lot going for it. I do think...
And truly, that was like in my memory, obviously it wasn't the first movie released after the pandemic, but it was kind of like the movies are back movie.
Yeah. So it was kind of like for Marvel what Top Gun Maverick was for all of cinema, Okay, yeah, but that's a good question. I do think it's possible that like if Fantastic Four First Steps, I'm sure if Kevin Feige had his druthers, that would be the narrative. Fantastic Four First Steps makes like, 800 million. No Way or a Brand New Day makes 1.2 or 1.3 billion, makes Deadpool Wolverine numbers.
Yeah.
And then Doomsday makes $2 billion. Secret Wars makes 2.2 billion or something like that.
$3 billion.
Yeah. But I don't think just you have to have a good story. And we
So
have to
important.
want to see these characters. And there's still a lot of question marks.
And look, they've been working on those 2 Avengers movies now for like, I don't know, it feels like 5 or 6 years. So the story has to be there, right? They've gone through drafts and writers like crazy.
Completely different versions of the movie.
Different
villains.
villain. Yep. So I'm hoping that because they had the time, they'll be able to get it right.
Yeah.
Right? Like Thunderbolts, in a way, feels like that if you compare it to all these movies with subtitles. If you compare it to Brave New World, right? Brave New World felt a little more rushed. It had more reshoots. It changed a lot of things. Whereas it felt like after the sort of like beef changeover for Thunderbolts, they kind of knew what they were doing. Yeah.
All right. This has been a great Marvel conversation.
It's been fun. We have more to talk about Marvel in a different episode, but today, specifically, the real reason that I'm on this show, because it's Survivor time.
It's Survivor Corner.
We need a graphic.
Yes.
Brian?
Ryan, you just want to whip up a graphic real quick?
No,
okay,
no,
we'll
no,
put
no,
it in
you're fine.
post.
No, no,
Great,
no,
sounds
no,
good.
no.
No, do not
Poor
you
Brian.
dare spend a second on that. Before we get into that, just a reminder: best way to support new Rockstars, nerdright.shop. Where I'm wearing our new Avengers shirts, and you know
have
what?
you seen the Thunderbolts? If you have, you might understand what the shirt says.
Or if you watched our new Rockstars post-credit scene video,
there you go.
Might get it there too. Yeah, coming up on the channel this week. Now, today, you may be begging us to cover some other news. We're shooting this a couple days in advance, but CCXP Mexico happened.
We're thinking there's going to be a Gen V trailer on Saturday. Who knows what's happening?
You may have seen a Gen V trailer. Yesterday was also Netflix's Tudum announcement, so there could be some Stranger Things Season 5 news.
We'll definitely get a Squid Game Season 3 thing.
A Wednesday trailer.
We'll
Frankenstein trailer with Oscar Isaac, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. So we're going to cover whatever the biggest headlines are over the next 5 days at New Rockstars. So we appreciate your patience. We ask you to be a bit more patient as we get to all that news. It all just dropped over the weekend, and we were at a soccer game yesterday. Hopefully, we chatted with some of you guys. All right, but that's what's coming up on the New Rockstars channel this week. Let's talk Survivor, John.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting.
By the way, our what we're watching.
This is what we're watching.
This isn't just us talking
and
Survivor.
the thing that we're watching is an internet page where they're slowly revealing the cast of Survivor 50, which is not the next Survivor season. Survivor 49 comes next, and you mentioned last week. Marvel producer, or I suppose former and future Marvel producer Nate Moore is going to be on season 49 of Survivor.
Yep.
Mike White worked so well for them. They were like, we need to have another behind the scenes Hollywood person, I guess.
Yeah. So he's going to be on season 49, which is going to be coming in fall 2025.
Yep.
And then in spring 2026, we're going to have the 50th season of Survivor. And Jeff Probst went on CBS. What is it? Today's Show? What do they do on CBS? No, they do.
I think that's
CBS This Morning.
Okay.
And revealed Hunger Games reaping style the names of the cast. And do you quickly want to run through the names?
Do you want to go through all of them?
Let's just quickly list all of them.
Okay, here we go. Jenna from Survivor Borneo.
Season 1.
She's
coming back.
Colby, of course. Get the cowboy hat back on Jeff's head, please, from Australia.
And in All Stars.
Of course. And Heroes and Villains. Colby's been great.
Heroes versus Villains, yeah.
Stephanie from Pulau. And Heroes versus Villains.
And she came back in Guatemala.
Yep. Suri, who is my personal GOAT of Survivor.
I love Suri.
Incredible. Her first season was Exile Island, and then Fans versus Favorites, Heroes versus Villains, Game Changers, which you have not watched yet.
She's on my Mount Rushmore of Survivor contestants.
I think sort of ubiquitous, of course. Yeah. This is an interesting one. Ozzy is coming back for his and I should say Suri's coming back for a record 5th time, tying a record that Boston Rob holds currently. Maybe I think it's just Boston Rob.
Okay.
Ozzy is also coming back for his 5th season. He was on Cook Islands, then Fans versus Favorites, South Pacific, and Game Changers.
So Cook Islands was one of the best seasons because it's the origin season for Parvati. Started on Cook Islands.
That just feels like classic Survivor type stuff back in the sort of like first era of Survivor. Now it's interesting because you're on Survivor season 30 right now, which feels like there's been 48 seasons. You know, it feels like you're majority of the way. Technically, you are the majority of the way through. But the way that like Survivor is bifurcating these groups is like almost like pre-pandemic Survivor, post-pandemic Survivor. They made a lot of changes to the format of Survivor. It's now 29 days instead of 39 days. There's only 19 contestants, something like that.
Okay. So you're saying it's going to get faster?
It is faster now.
Okay.
And I think that they did 12 and 12. They split it up. Pre-pandemic 12, pre-new era, whatever you want to call it, 12, post-new era 12. So there's a lot of folks online who are frustrated that they're getting a bunch of people from more modern seasons and not bringing in even like sort of where you're watching right now.
Yeah. No one from the seasons 20 through 30.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is weird. And Survivor has been casting fewer and fewer They've been casting younger and younger, I should say.
Okay.
You get like 1 or 2 people that are maybe older than a millennial. And so maybe that's part of the reason they don't want to go back to those older seasons. It's just that the people who are above a certain age struggle more, or something like that. So Ozzy is coming back. He was most recently in Game Changers, which I think is like not a great season for him. But you haven't watched that yet, so I don't want to spoil some stuff. Coach is coming back, the Dragon Slayer himself.
My God.
I'm excited to see Coach again, just because we need. Well, there's another contestant that you haven't watched yet that like seeing Coach and Q together is going to be so weird.
I don't know who Q is yet.
For people who watch Survivor.
Coach began in Token Cheese, right? In Brazil.
And then was in Heroes vs. Villains.
And then came back in Heroes vs. Villains
and then South Pacific.
Oh, and South Pacific he won that season, right?
I think he came in second.
Or he came in second, okay.
Then here's a bunch of people that you won't recognize, right? Aubrey from Ko Wrong. And then was in Game Changers and Edge of Extinction. Chrissy from Heroes versus Hustlers versus Healers, which was a weird ass season. Christian, a fan favorite, coming back. He was in David and Goliath. Did you watch that season?
No, I haven't gotten to David and Goliath yet. But there's a lot of David and Goliath people from what I can tell.
Yeah. And then Angelina, who is, if you've seen, she's got a viral clip online that doesn't spoil anything, that is very fun to watch. She was also in White Lotus season 2 in the opening, where they're sort of like, oh, I'm so sad to be leaving, and then there's a couple girls who had just gotten there and were excited. She was one of those girls because Mike White, the creator of White Lotus, is coming back. They shared a season of Survivor together. They were both on David and Goliath.
So Mike White, longtime producer. I have not seen a Mike White season yet, but if you're just watching or listening to this podcast, Mike White I'm so excited to see him on Survivor. He was in School of Rock.
Yeah, and wrote School of Rock.
Wrote School of Rock.
He did Enlightened on HBO with Laura Dern. He's a fantastic writer and was so good on Survivor. I'm so, truly one of my favorite Survivor contestants. And I was like, oh, it's too bad he'll never come back. Wow.
There's been some consternation over Mike White that I've seen online just because he brings back his co-contestants from Survivor on seasons of White Lotus, that there might be an unfair incentive for people to align with him or to keep him along longer so that they can build these relationships with him.
I suppose.
So they can get
Natalie was also on his tribe in his season, and she was a background player in season 3 of White Lotus. So I don't know. You're just hoping that you get flown out to a cool location and make
maybe that'll be a reason
to
vote him out, because they're like, well, people will want that, so I want to get him out.
That sort of like the well, that's a spoiler.
Thank you for considering me when I'm not considering a lot of people who are watching this. Right?
I imagine if you're watching this now, you're probably been watching the Survivor discussion on the show for a little while. You're hopefully caught up. Rick Devens is a contestant from Edge of Extinction, which is a season that I did not watch, thankfully. So I'm not familiar with him. He looks a little bit like Jared Fogle, and I feel bad for that. Challenge Beast Jonathan Young. Now we're in a new era. Survivor 42. That'll be fun to watch again. He's sort of he's not as fun or cute as Ozzy, I guess, but sort of a new era Ozzy. Emily was in Survivor 45. If you remember Survivor 45, she did not have a great start and then kind of became a fan favorite, specifically after they did the Survivor auction. She had a fun moment in that. I just want to avoid spoilers so hard here for the final places that these people got into. But Dee, who sort of was a very strong player in Survivor 45 in terms of like getting people to, she sort of had like the Tony Tony or like Boston Rob about her, not in terms of her personality, but like she could just get people to do whatever she asked, basically. Impressive. But yeah, very fun. Here's Q, Survivor 46, truly my nightmare. Charlie is coming back also for Survivor 46. Hopefully Maria stays at home. Tiffany from Survivor 46 is coming back, as is Genevieve from Survivor 47. Another fan favorite, Genevieve. I did not care for her. So we'll see. And then Kyle, Joe, and Camilla are all coming back from Survivor 48. Camilla and Kyle coming back is a really interesting combination. Hopefully you forget this by the time you watch Survivor 48. They were just like a very strong alliance. And to bring both of them back so soon after that is interesting to me. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's a couple of previous Survivor winners in here, but a lot of folks who have never won. I know there's some frustration about very specific people not coming back. I'm very excited about this cast for specific people. But I get that, you all have your favorites and you want your favorites cast.
And then Jet Probe said there are 2 mystery seats.
Oh,
right?
yeah, sorry. There are 2 seats for Survivor 49, which is not aired yet.
They're keeping it for 49?
That is... The 2 of those people are going to be on Survivor 50. If you want to learn their names, they're on the internet. I don't remember them off the top of my head because I've not seen the season yet, obviously. But you can find out. There's 2 people from Survivor 49. I think it would be fun, if not a little bit of a spoiler. Obviously, not all of these people went very far in the game, but you do kind of want to keep your eye on those names because you know that they're going to return during the season. So I'm trying to decide if I want to spoil myself or not.
So those 2 seats are not for like a Boston Rob or a Sandra.
Correct. They're
unless
confirmed...
those people surprise show up in 49. I don't think they would.
Yeah. Now and in the past, Survivor has had like alternates that are kind of standing by in case someone gets COVID the day before or whatever that has happened. So maybe there's some people. I know there were a couple people.
Tony's just sitting by his phone.
He's like he hangs up with Alan Cumming and he's like calls Jeff Probst. Yeah. So maybe some people could flip, but traditionally, if they don't usually announce the cast this early for that reason, right?
Yeah.
I will say Nate Moore is not one of the Survivor 49 names that is coming for Survivor 50, which
confirmed?
Makes sense. Well, because the 2 names from Survivor 49 are out there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I don't want to go look then.
No.
Okay,
so I'm trying to decide if I want to watch Survivor 49 with the context of knowing who they're going to.
Oh, I see. I get it. Okay, I'm not going to look. I'm going to try to avoid it.
I think that's smart.
Because I think Kelly and I will catch up pretty fast. We may not catch up by the time season 49
You've got a whole...
We have all
10
summer.
months.
We have all summer, but we're also going to like do stuff. I want to go outside.
Lame.
But we'll see. I think we can catch up on a lot of it. But I do want to watch the Nate Moore season.
I'm so excited to watch
it
the
with
Nate
you.
Moore.
I want to watch it with you and with
Here's
Abby.
what we're going to do. We're going to have new Rockstars Survivor watch parties. It's going to happen. And we'll have a lot of fun.
But here's the thing. We recognize that you subscribe to New Rockstars or you watch New Rockstars.
Sorry. I was talking about us.
Yeah, we're going to do it on our own time.
Yeah.
You guys are a lot of you have asked, even talking about it on Sneak Peek, we talk about it at the end of Sneak Peek because we want to give you guys a chance to opt out of this conversation.
Done.
Since it has nothing to do really with Marvel, with the exception of Nate Moore joining it. But we're trying to figure out, is us talking about it on Sneak Peek too much? Would you rather us just shorten these segments and talk about other things that might be more relevant to what you watch if you watch nerdy fandom stuff? Would you listen to this as its own spin-off podcast if we were to do like an audio only version of it?
Here's the problem with your line of questioning, Erik. You're asking these people the question after we've just talked about Survivor for 20 minutes. So all the people who are still watching are going to be like, hell question. Yeah, dude.
We really should survey people at the top of a Marvel video.
When we're at Comic-Con this year, we'll ask people if they watch Survivor. No, but those 49 contestants returning is very exciting to me, even though we haven't seen them before, because I love a returnee season where there's returnees that most people have no idea how they play the game, who they are, what kind of alliances they like to build.
Showing up in Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah, it was exactly like that, right?
And they're like, no idea what he was dealing with.
Who is this guy who looks like he was chunkier about 39 days ago?
Yeah, he looks a little malnourished.
That will be a very interesting dynamic because all of these Survivor contestants are either like such big fans of the show or have been involved in the show for so long. I'm sure they're all doing research and listening to episodes of Rob Has a Podcast or whatever to prepare. Another person people really wanted to be on the show, but not the case.
He will not be. But he's arguably more fun to just listen podcast.
Well, who would do the podcast? I guess he could do it because it airs later.
Yeah.
Duh.
Right, he can do it. But yeah. I mean, it would just be a different thing if he's talking about the production experience. I think he's more fun to listen to as like an observer of the show. He's here in the muck with all of us fans watching it. this past weekend I did I went to a party that was hosted by some friends in the media publicist influencer space that was like a traders party. And spoiler warning, I won it with some other traders.
Is this going to come out?
No, it's already out there. This isn't content.
I was excited. I thought we could watch you.
It's just a game night
put
that I
on
went
a big
to.
cloak.
But like I did some my strategy, which now that I'm putting it out there, I can't ever repeat if I'm ever invited back to one of these things. My strategy, I didn't know if I was going to be a trader or a faithful when I was invited until I got there and they told me I was going to be a trader. I did research into like I've watched a bunch of the traders seasons. Like it's so tactical driven and the traders have so much power in the game that it's really hard to strategize if you're faithful, but there is a strategy. And as a trader, I looked for faithful who were trying
to put those pieces together.
And I was looking for other people who had done that research too. And I got them out of the game as fast as I could. And I respected it. And afterwards I went up to them and I'm like,
I'm so sorry.
I really loved playing with you. And I'm really sorry I had to do this. But there was one person who played with us who was one of those people. And I just thought she was so much fun. I'm like, I'm going to keep you around as long as we can. Because it is so fun. And once she started to get close, I was like, all right,
it's your time.
It's a shame. We got to take her out. But man,
that's how it goes.
It made me think like, could I do Survivor? But again, I talked to Jess about this. The challenges, I would be so bad at so much of the game, I would fail.
Look, Erik, speaking of the traders in person, they're also sometimes they run Survivor things at Griffith Park, and you can do challenges and have a tribe and vote people out and basically play Survivor.
Rockstars should do like a Big Brother or a Traders or something like that.
We have enough cameras.
We have enough cameras. We could just close the doors to the studio, get all the fruit flies dead, and do it at a time of year where fruit flies aren't.
There's one on your mic.
There's literally one on our mic. It's fruit fly season here in Los Angeles, so I feel like we're on Survivor.
You know what's so funny? The other day I saw a cluster of fruit flies. They were on the closed cap of the Da Bomb hot sauce from Hot Ones, and I was just wondering what they were experiencing in that moment.
It's just
maybe it was like psycho for them. They were like on psilocybin or something, some kind of equivalent.
Well, it's been fun chatting.
It's been so fun.
This is one of I think on our Mount Rushmore of episodes of the Sneak Peek in terms of the meat that we chewed on.
That's kind.
Like this, we covered a lot of ground. And John, I really love co-hosting.
I love
these
Sneak
with
Peek, man. This is a fun show.
It's fun. It's fun.
Show.
Jess will be back. Don't worry. But it's fun.
If she can escape the trunk of my car, I needed to talk about the Survivor news. Just kidding. She's fine.
Thanks so much for watching. Support all the channels on the New Rockstars network. We have 4 of them. If you could subscribe to all of them, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. And thanks to Brian, our off-screen producer and editor who gets all these out into the world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye everybody.
Guys.